Hi, all, and welcome back to the Congressional App Challenge Debugged podcast. I'm your host, Medha, and today our guest is Karin Zhang. Karin is a VP of Engineering on Twitch's Money team, which builds the tools that let creators earn a living pursuing their passion. She is also the lead of Twitch's Women Plus Guild, an employee resource group where anyone can discuss and advocate for issues and initiatives related to gender in tech. With over 20 years of experience, she has a proven track record for motivating her teams and navigating a field with little diversity and a lack of female role models and mentors. Karin was inspired to work at Twitch by their mission to empower communities to create together and the opportunities to build products that make a tangible impact on creators' lives. Karin is passionate about people and has a focus on mentoring and developing engineers to build a stronger team. Karin, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm great. Super happy to be on this podcast and talking with you today.
Super
How are
happy to.
you?
I'm also doing great. Excited to have you, right? Like the highlight of my day. So I'd love it if you could just talk a little bit more about what you do at Twitch and what your day-to-day looks like. It seems like you're doing so many things. You know, you're working on the Women Plus Guild, and then you're also a software engineer and a manager. So would love to understand a little bit more about what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, it's definitely very exciting working at Twitch. As you mentioned, we are doing a lot of good things with our creators and building the community. And my role is really leading the engineering teams that is part of the monetization organization, where we provide the tools and the right platforms for our creators to earn a living. So my scope includes payments, onboarding, and payouts. So Twitch is a two-sided marketplace where we allow supporters and community support our creators, as well as making sure that we pay them the right earning they earn from on the platform. So my team is very focused on creator benefits and making sure that we provide the right experience for our creators.
That's so incredible. And I think as someone who watches Twitch streams, right, I think that's so important, something a lot of creators talk about, right? About how important it is to have pay equity and how they feel empowered to post on Twitch. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about, I think Twitch has been in the headlines for this exact thing, right? And obviously, feel free to stop me if we're not allowed to talk about this, but I'd love to understand what are some of the challenges you faced while working in your role, especially when it comes to trying to manage like creators' interests as well as Twitch's interests.
So great question. Yes, I think where we start is always understanding our creators' needs. And when we meet out their needs, we also be able to deliver the best experience for the company as well as them. And then for me, as part of monetization, is maximizing the benefits that they are earning a living on the platform. Then we create the best tools for them.
That's incredible. And I think that's a great philosophy. And I'd love to flip the same question, but ask it to you about your career. What's been the most challenging project or hurdle you've had to push through when it comes to your career?
Yeah, great question. I think if we talk about projects, I really do love challenging projects because that gives me a chance to solve hard problems as well as work with smart people to drive impact. And looking back, I think one of the projects I always think very fondly is when we first launched the affiliate program on Twitch. For those of you who are not familiar, right, it's really live streaming. And early days, we only had a very small pool of people who can earn money on Twitch.
Right.
Anybody can stream, but in order for you to earn money, you need to qualify. And then we need to sort of collect details from you on your payment information, have you sign agreements in order for us to onboard you. And we call that the onboarding process. So during the early days, that process would be very, very manual. And it can take up to like 2-3 weeks in order for us to say you can now make money on Twitch and with all the back and forth. So that was limiting the benefit we can offer to our creators. So we decided to build and design an automated platform so that people can onboard much, much quicker. So it was quite challenging from many aspects. On the tech side, we were still very much in the early days of a monolithic application. And by that, I mean that we have a single application that held all of our logic. It has pros and cons, but the downside is that it's usually very tightly coupled together, right? It make updates very hard, and one issue in one area can bring down the whole website. And then on the other side is the microservice architecture, which we were moving towards. So it allows us more flexibility and reliability and performance. So it was very exciting to be one of the first teams to create a new service, but that also means building new elements while still working with the legacy application at the same time. So it posed very interesting challenges for us. And then I feel it's also very tempting as when you build a new system that you want to build it perfectly. And that runs the risk of overbuilding and overcomplicating the implementation of it as well. And oftentimes, spending more time and throwing more things at it is actually not the right approach to take, right? You want to find that right size solution that meets the customer needs and deliver in the right time. So what really helped us in that is that we had a very strong team that challenged each other and making sure that we hold each other accountable and working backwards from delivering the best value to our customers in the shortest amount of time. And in there, we were able to really get to that right size solution. And also on the engineering side, we make sure that we thought about the future extension and flexibility we need so that in the future we can enhance it even further. So on the business side, it was also an interesting journey because it's a lot of evolving requirements. It's the first time we built an onboarding platform. We knew there were things we had to work out along the way, like legal, tax, finance requirements, but there were also unknowns that came up when we didn't know at the beginning, right? So on that front, I felt like it was also what helped us to get to success was having a very clear shared understanding of what we're working backwards from. In that, it helps us to stay focused and really try to find creative ways to get around obstacles when they did show up. So, I mean, I can go on and on about a lot of the other challenges, but I think to save time, if I look across, there are just a couple key things to focus on when you're dealing with projects. The first is that strong collaboration, right? Building a strong team, relationships both within and outside of teams, and as well as external stakeholders like vendors, etc., really helps us get to that place where we can succeed together. And the second thing is communication, right? Beyond transparent communication, setting very clear goals and having that shared understanding of expectations help set everybody up for success as well from the get-go, right? And then lastly is always stay flexible. Surprises will show up, and as much we want to plan a perfect launch, life doesn't happen that way. We all know that. So we should, by all means, still look around the corner, think about risks and mitigations, but in a sense also embrace that there will be uncertainty and the ambiguity, and that helps us to stay creative and really push forward. So in the end, we did launch the affiliate program very successfully after many, many months of work across 10 plus teams. And then we also was able to follow very quickly with enhancements for our partners as well afterwards. We reduced onboarding from weeks to minutes, onboarded millions of creators that drove a step change in our business. And then that also means that people can pretty much monetize and start earning money immediately after they receive that invitation to join the affiliate program. It was amazing. I still remember the feeling of seeing creators just literally in tears because they were so happy that they were able to join the affiliate program. So that's been an amazing experience.
That's absolutely incredible, the impact you were able to make, right? And a very real impact because people's livelihood is built off of this kind of process being extremely efficient. So I think props to your team on that. That's incredible.
Thank you.
But I know you mentioned team culture being a big factor. So I'm curious when you're hiring or managing, what steps do you take when it comes to fostering an environment that's not only positive but also promotes diversity and allows people to bring like their skill sets and to the table?
Yeah, great question. I'm a strong believer in building and maintaining a positive team culture because I do think that's critical in achieving success. So, in my opinion, trust is sort of like the central element in that. And the trust equation, where actually my coach shared with me, really resonated. And in that equation, trust equals credibility, plus reliability plus intimacy over self-orientation. And personally, I do translate that into a few ways on my own leadership style. So first, credibility to me means I show up authentically. I lead by example and I model the values and culture I want to build. I think the leader sets the tone for the organization. And if I demonstrate integrity, honesty, and treating others with respect and empathy, then I can inspire and motivate my team to do the same. Each of them then become a force multiplier to create a positive environment that we all want together, right? And then onto reliability, that is really having that consistency in keeping your promises and following through, right? There's something to call out also in here around communication transparency because perception is somebody else's reality. So it's not only about the things that you do, what you say you will do, it's also making sure people are on the same page and understand the things that you are doing, understand how things are progressing, and making sure they're informed. And I try to achieve this by having my team set very clear expectations and establish smart goals. And by smart, I mean specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, and as well as maintain a very good cadence of open communication with each other. And I think this also creates alignment across teams regarding current status and goals and promote that culture of constructive accountability, right? We hold each other accountable for what we committed to. And then team members then support and encourage each other to meet that shared goal. And when we work backwards from a shared goal, we also unify ourselves on that purpose. And that welcomes different perspectives because even when we don't agree and we do not agree oftentimes, right? We have different opinions in there that we understand we all have the best intentions because we are working backwards from that shared desire to achieve the same goal so that we welcome those different perspectives, different voices. Creating that psychological safety is something I value tremendously because it really fosters open communication and encourage everybody to contribute without being afraid of being judged in that. So the last element was intimacy. For me, that is really building strong relationships for both within and outside the teams and with and it's treating each other as whole persons. And when I meet a new person or I start to lead a new team, I take the time to get to know each of them by setting aside time for one-on-ones, asking questions, get to know who they are, and understand their needs, how they prefer to work, and just really connecting them on a human level, right? Beyond working together on projects and sort of collaborating, there's also need for us to just really be humans and know each other. So we also try to do team activity, bonding activities together with my teams because that does build camaraderie and also strengthen the bonds between my teams for teamwork. And then the last thing is self-orientation. Again, for me, that goes back to aligning and working backwards together from a common goal because there's no I in team, right? Like we often say. If you think about it, it's not too different from working on a school project together as well, right? You want to to build a strong team, you want to have good relationship with your teammates, good rapport, clear expectations, agreements upfront on what you want to achieve and how you deal with it when things don't go right, stay in communication, and be a reliable teammate to your other team members and deliver your commitments. And the last thing is being willing to change the plan when things change, right? Step up and take on additional work beyond your assigned task so that you can all work together to make things happen.
Yeah, I really like what you said, especially about psychological safety, especially in engineering. I think that's something that's definitely overlooked at times. So I love that that's a priority as well as leadership, needing to model what they want the team culture to look like. At my own team, I work at a big tech company, and in my own team, I feel like I've found that I gravitate towards leaders that model the type of culture that I want. And I feel very lucky to be in a team like that, but I definitely think that's super important. So props to you for doing that. And you mentioned your coach. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about mentorship and how you've been able to develop either your career or how you've been able to help develop mentees' careers, both ways through mentorship.
Yes, I really think mentorship is very important. And I can probably share an example of my mentorship relationship with somebody, and through that we can talk through some of the things, I think are valuable. So I'll share the example where I was mentoring another engineering leader. Let's call them Alex. They were a high performing leader, but felt like there were certain areas that was holding them back and stopping them from being able to continue to grow and take on more scope. So we talked and they reached out and I took them on as a mentee. Before I get into specific about our relationship, I think you were asking about mentorship in general, right? I think with any other relationship, it is very important to build that foundation of trust and establishing that connection with that person. And there's also something to say about the chemistry that when you work with somebody and you just have that feeling just click, right? And it just feels just right. So it's also important to trust your gut, because it's very possible that you admire somebody, their abilities from afar, but they can still not be the right person for you as a mentor. And that's perfectly okay. I think it's actually more beneficial for you to be open and honest and say, hey, this might not be the right fit for us, and really move on and find that right person who's going to be able to work with you and give you the value that you're looking for to support you through and get to success. So let's get back into the example with Alex then. So there are a few things I think really makes this case worked really well in my mind. First is establishing very clear goals. So Alex was very clear around like, hey, these are the things I want to achieve. And specifically, they were struggling with scaling themselves because they had a bigger team. They're managing a lot more people. So what they used to do does not quite work well anymore. And they need to do more step back also to set direction for the larger team. And that is something is actually that I struggled a little bit earlier in my career as well. So I felt a very strong desire to support Alex and pay it forward to the assistance I received when I was earlier and somebody else mentored me. And it's important for me to empower others and join my own experience to help them. And then as we get into that, to quote Brene Brown, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And that's something that I'm trying to apply in everything I do as well. And so as I entered mentorship with Alex, we agreed that we will stay very candid in our communication. And there are good things and constructive feedbacks that I will give them as well along the way. And having that agreement also made things a lot more effective as I was working with Alex, right? And then one more thing I was going to point out is generally in mentorship, some people tend to think that mentors are the ones who are leading the conversation, but actually mentees really should be the one who's owning and driving that conversation so that you get the value out of that relationship. So when Alex took ownership of it and saying, hey, these are the things I want, these are the things I need help on, it really enabled me to be that best sounding board I can for them. And that also leads to my next point. As a mentor, I really want to share my experience, but be very specific to what Alex needed, right? So we come together and talk about, hey, how often do we meet? And when we meet, we were very specific around the situations that they were dealing with. These are the challenges they were facing. So I am there to talk through. We play through scenarios, we evaluate options together, and we also brainstorm strategies. Part of my role is also to equip Alex with the best tools so that they can solve these problems going forward themselves without me jumping in solving it for them. And to be very honest, I'm a fixer at heart. And so this is the part where I sometimes struggle where I'm like, oh, I just hold myself back. I don't want to solve it for them. I want them to also think about how to solve it going forward themselves. But in the end, I really believe our people are our most valuable assets, and investing in their growth and helping them in their career journey is something that's super fulfilling for me personally as well. So Alex did go on to increase their scope and take on more in the organization. So I'm very glad I was able to guide them along the way. And this is one example I'm sharing, but there's also been other things where I received as a mentor, as a mentee, benefits from senior and other leaders that gave me that along the way. So I truly, again, really believe in the value of mentorship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I really like what you said about, mentees should be driving the conversation. I think oftentimes mentees might be a little bit intimidated or a little bit scared too, but I think to that you made a really great point about like creating candid conversation, and that's how you create comfortability for the mentee to be able to bring up their own issues and drive that. So I really appreciate that advice on mentorship. And speaking of advice, I want to end with a question about advice. We actually posted on our Instagram that we were interviewing you today and asked some of our listeners to submit questions. And one question that I think, especially because you've spoken so much about promoting diversity, especially gender diversity in technology, one question I received was, what is some advice you have for girls who aren't sure what they want to do but they know they like STEM?
Yeah, I think I did mention something around being able to have maybe I didn't. It's about that growth mindset and
Mhm.
really trying something different, right? It's okay if you don't like it at the end, but
Right.
give that a try. Be open-minded and not to limit yourself. Oh, that may not be something for me. I might not be good at it. And the other advice I got, which really stuck with me, is that um, you don't have to make everybody like you also. And that's perfectly okay, right? Because I feel like sometimes we want to do the best job we can, and we
Mhm.
feel like if we cannot do the thing the best we can, people will not like us, people will not
Right.
look at us the right way, we will disappoint them. It's actually perfectly okay. Right? That's something I want to tell the girls. It's a reminder to really prioritize knowing yourself, being authentic, be brave to try different things, and don't try to seek approval from everybody because that's an impossible goal if you really think about it, right?
Yeah.
Um, it stay true to yourselves and really sometimes that maybe means say yes to some things and say no to other things, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes the right decision can also be the less popular path. That takes courage. So it's on all of us to, again, going back to leading by example and setting those right boundaries and showing our young girls that it's possible, right? We can make those choices, we can be successful. And then when we do those things, we do the thing for ourselves, but we also hopefully inspire others to follow and do the same thing as well.
I think that's incredible advice. And on such a positive note and such a great advice note, thank you so much, Karen, for coming on and sharing your journey. It was so, so interesting to learn and just so inspiring to see you in such a high level, working at such an amazing company and leading such a great team. And I'm sure for our listeners too. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. And we will see you next week for a new episode.